Hello, I'm Samantha from the Makespace. You can find more patterns at www.themakespace.uk. Today's video we're going to be sewing the Ben bag, a bag inspired by my graphic designer Ben. I've got two versions here for you. The brown version has been worn for a couple of weeks, so it is a little bit softer, and the charcoal version, which we're going to be sewing today. This bag has been designed specifically to use the birthing method or the turn through method of making a bag in this style. If you prefer to use binding and you're comfortable using binding, then please do take the pattern pieces and the instructions for the bag up until the gusset and modify it to use binding. It will benefit from binding. It does give it a slightly sturdier construction, but I have designed this pattern specifically for those who want to make a bag in this style but absolutely hate binding. You will find the bag is easier to turn through using binding, but some of us absolutely detest using binding, and I get that. I completely understand, which is why I've designed this pattern as I have. So let's have a little look at the features. On the front we've got a concealed zipper pocket, so you can just see the zip pull dangling down slightly there, and then there's a little pocket in the front for your whatever you need to carry with you. The top is sealed in, so you can't access this top bit where it's all raw, but the bottom is a pocket fully lined, and then the top uses a zip closure. On the back there's no pocket, it's just completely plain. You can add a slip pocket onto there if you prefer, but it's just completely plain. It's quite nice to carry with nothing on the back there. Inside then we've got a zip pocket which has got the same angle as the front pocket, but it doesn't have the concealed part to it. It doesn't have the fold over, so it's just a completely plain zip pocket. However, the edges of the zip are enclosed. There's no raw edges of the zip in there. And then on the front, or well, actually it depends on how you construct this, but on the other panel we've got a large angled slip pocket, and I've divided mine to include a pen slot, and I'll talk you through how to do that as well. That's in the pattern. The charcoal version is exactly the same. I've used webbing for this pattern just to give it a slightly more utility look to the pattern. It's exactly the same. On the front we've got the concealed front pocket, and then on the inside we've got the angled zip pocket. I don't know if you can see that, there we go, angled zip pocket, and the angled slip pockets as well, and then that's it. There's nothing else in there, so there's plenty of room for the bits and pieces that you need to carry. I really enjoyed making this bag, and I think it's a great finished bag. As I said, the brown one has been used for a couple of weeks, and I did get a little protest when I asked for it back to film this video, so I'm sure that will be put straight back into use as soon as I get home. If you'd like to make one, please do follow along with me. I'd love to see what you make, so if you want to share with us, please do contact us, help@themakespace.uk. But other than that, grab your supplies and let's get sewing. Right, so let's get started with our front panel. So first we need one of our lengths of zip. Now it does tell you in the pattern how long to make this, so I'm just going to cut mine down to size. In fact, I might do it with my ruler, which has actually got the 1/8 of an inch marked on it. So the measurements for this are in the pattern. So I'm going to mark what length to trim it first, and then I can make sure that I've got my zip pull inside that area before I cut. I'm going to try and cut as evenly as possible. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to use our zip tabs, and we're going to add these onto each end of the zip. These are not interfaced, these don't need to be interfaced. They're purely just to keep the bulk of the zip outside of the seam allowances. I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided tape, but not on that end. I'm just going to clip this one because my tape is super sticky and really hard to get the backing paper off of. So I'm going to try and use it as sparing as possible. So I've put my tab right side down, just matching up the raw edge of the zip with the edge of the tab. And then on this open end, I'm just going to hold these two sides together and stick that onto there. Add a clip just to hold it in place. Now I'm going to sew these into place at 1/4 inch seam allowance, or 6mm. And I'm just going to back stitch at the start and the end. I'm using my regular stitch length. Sew all the way across, and again on the other end. And I can trim my threads. Like so. Now, if you've got an iron to hand, you can fold these back and give those a nice press, or you can just finger press them like I am, purely because I forgot to plug my iron in and it's very tiny and it's under the desk. So we'll just keep going. Mine are okay like that. Right, so on the right side of our exterior pocket top, that's this funny angled piece, I'm just going to run a line of double-sided tape along this bottom angled edge. And we're going to add the zip right sides down. And this piece is not interfaced, it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be for strength or for structure, so we omit it there. If you're using a cotton, you maybe want to interface it. Right, so we'll fold the zip in half and find the centre. I'm going to mark that on both edges, because I keep putting pins in, moving them out of the way to sew, and then losing my centre. So decide which way you want your zip to open. So I want my zip to open from the top left to the bottom right, just so that my opening is at the tallest side. So I'm going to have mine like this, and then we're going to pop the zip right sides down, lining it up with the centre of that edge, and matching up these raw edges all along this angled edge there. And then we're going to sew this into place using our regular 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre seam allowance. So I'm going to back stitch at the start and the end, and I'm using my regular stitch length for this one. So I'm going to go as close to the zip pull as I can, but then leave my needle down, lift my presser foot, and I can just move that zip pull out of the way there. Back stitch at the other end. Lovely. Okay. Now we're not going to top stitch it at this point, okay? So although you can press it or finger press it away from the fabric, don't top stitch that edge of the zip yet. What we're going to do is get our one exterior pocket bottom, okay, and right sides up, add a bit of tape to this one as well. So we should only have one of these in our exterior fabric, so we don't need to worry about which one we're using at the moment. As I said, my tape is very, very sticky. It's a bit tricky to get the backing paper off sometimes when it's so sticky. There we go. So now we're going to add our zip right sides down, matching up the centre on top of this exterior piece, all the way along that edge. Okay, and we can sew this into place now. I'm just going to sew at a slightly smaller seam allowance of 1/4 inch or 6mm, because we're just holding this in place at the minute. You can change down to a basting stitch, but on this one I found that I do forget to change my stitch length back up again, so I tend not to, but that is your choice if you prefer to change. Oh dear, I think I've lost my bobbin thread. That's a good start, isn't it? At least I got to the end before I ran out. I'm just going to change my bobbin over and then we'll be back to carry on. Right, I've changed my bobbin over. Glad it happened then and not when we were about to do some top stitching. Now we want one of our lining pocket bottoms. So this will be one of the shorter ones that you've got. And with your exterior pocket bottom right side up, try and ignore this top piece, the lining pocket bottom needs to match the shape with that right sides down. So we're sandwiching the zip and the top in between. So you can see on the other side, it matches interfacing side to interfacing side. Okay. Got a bit confused myself. Right, we'll add a line of double-sided basting tape to the zip, just where we've sewn already. We'll see how sticky it is. It's stuck to my finger then. Nothing quite like trying to take backing paper off. It's really sticky when you're on video. I've got 2 bits to try and get off as well. There we go. Right, so now we're going to add our lining pocket bottom right sides down on top. It might be easier. Let me just mark my centre on the right side as well. Might be easier to have your pocket bottom right sides up and then add your other panel with your zip attached on top, so you can line up that raw edge there. Okay, so we've got right side to right side, pocket bottom, pocket top, and the right side of the zip, and then the lining pocket bottom on the bottom there. Now we're going to sew this using our regular 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre seam allowance. Using our regular stitch length, and back stitching at the start and the end. And take your time with this one because it does want to push you off course slightly. As I approach my zip pull, I can just lift my presser foot and move that out of the way. And then back stitch at the other end as well. Okay, I'll open this up and show you what you should have. So we should have, if you flip those 2 pocket bottoms together, you should have your exterior bottom and top, and on the back nothing new interfacing at all, just the raw fabric, and then a zip, an exterior pocket, no hang on, a lining pocket bottom on that side, on the wrong side of the zip. Okay, there's a bit of a tongue twister for me there. So I'm going to line up these bottom and side edges. If you can press your fabric, then please do press it. If you can't, then just do as I'm doing, line up your sides and bottoms, and then make sure this seam is nice and proud. Your zip teeth are away from that seam, and then what we're going to do is we are going to top stitch along this bottom edge only. Don't top stitch on the top side yet. So I'm going to increase my stitch length to my top stitching stitch length, and then I'm going to sew at 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from this sewn and folded edge. And I'm not back stitching, I've just left my thread tails long. We'll go as far as we can, and then I'll move the zip pull to the other side. I'll lift my presser foot, move my zip pull and carry on all the way to the other side. Might leave those thread tails long for a minute until we cross over them with another line of stitching. Right, what we want to do now, we can pop this to one side for the minute, and we want an exterior main panel, and then there should be one of your pocket bottoms but cut to the taller line. Okay, so this is the one cut to the taller line, and we're going to add this onto this main panel. So I'll just clip it into place for the minute. Just adds another layer of stability onto this bag so you don't have to use any extra stabilizers. It would help if I lined my piece up, wouldn't it? There we go. Okay, now we're going to baste around the outside edge using a 1/4 inch or 6mm seam allowance. So I've increased my stitch length to my longest stitch length. As I come to these curves, I'm just stopping with my needle down, lifting my presser foot so that I can go around these curves without disturbing anything or anything bunching. Okay, lovely. Right, we're going to pop this front pocket panel section on top, lining up the side and bottom edges. Make sure that everything's nice and smooth in there. Okay, don't worry about the top doesn't match at this point. It should match okay on there. I might add a few more clips just in case. And then we are going to baste this into place just on the bottom half, so from this bit of top stitching here all the way down around the bottom and up to this bit of top stitching here. So we're not going to cross over this zip at all. I will move my zip pull into the middle though. So again, we're basting at 1/4 inch or 6mm. Same as we did before. Don't panic if it doesn't match up at the sides and the edges perfectly. We can always give it a little trim. Okay, I'll trim my threads now. So if you've got anything that doesn't quite match, you can give it a little trim now if you would like to. Any extra threads. And then what we're going to do with this top section is just bring this down to match the top and sides, and you should have a nice overlap then. Okay, so literally all you do is just bring it down, and you will have to sort of bring it down at a bit of an angle. If you've marked your centres, you can match your centres. Alternatively, just try and match these top curves as long as your edges are matching on the sides. You should be okay. Like so. And I've still got my zip pull in the middle there so that I know exactly where it is. Okay, now we're going to baste around the outside of the top section exactly the same as we did before, using a 1/4 inch or 6mm seam allowance. That will just hold everything in place while we do our top stitching to secure it. You can do a bit of back stitching here if you want to, just for a bit of extra security. That's your choice. As I come up to these curves, they are a bit of a sheep. That was a cross between a sharp curve and a steep curve, and it came out as a sheep curve. They are a bit of a sharp curve. So you might want to move your presser foot as you manoeuvre around these ones. And go back to the end of that panel. Lovely, so we should be nice and secure here. Everything held in place while we do our nice bit of stitching now. So we've got our pocket there, but we've got this raw section here. So what we want to do is secure this into place. So I'm just going to go down and grab my other ruler so I can make sure that I'm doing this accurately, and then we'll come back and top stitch along here. Right, I've got my smaller ruler, which is a little bit easier to use. I'm just going to trim this extra bit of fabric off there. So now we're going to so essentially our top stitching, we're going to sew along this folded section from the seam allowance up along the top of the zip, back down and along this extra section of fold here, just back into the seam allowance. So we just need to mark on our panel where we're stitching, and we're sewing these first two lines, or the start and end line, completely parallel to the side seams. So when you're lining up your ruler, it should be completely parallel to the side seams. Okay, and then the line that goes along the top of the zip follows the shape or the angle of the zip. Okay, so we've got our two side lines completely parallel, and then the one that follows the shape or the angle of the zip is at this sort of steep angle here. At least I said steep then instead of sheep. Make sure you use something that you can wash away completely. The iron-on or the iron removable pens, I have found, do come back if you go somewhere particularly cold. So make sure that whatever you're using can be removed completely. I'm just using a Chaco liner from Clover, which is chalk dust really. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll start in this seam allowance here, and we'll top stitch at 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from this folded edge. Stop when we get to our first line and pivot. So up to the corner, along this line and back down this line. So we're sewing 1/8 of an inch away from the folds here and here. Everything else is going to be directly on the line that we've drawn. So 1/8 of an inch on the line, up to the corner, pivot, down to this bottom corner, pivot, down to the fold, and then 1/8 of an inch away just to finish off in this second seam allowance. So my stitch length, I'm going to use my top stitching stitch length. I am going to take my time at this one because this is neat and it's going to be seen by everybody, so it's very visible. So I'm starting in the seam allowance and just take my time. Now I'm not quite at my first line, so I'm going to decrease my stitch length down to the smallest stitch and just take a couple of teeny tiny little stitches till I hit that line, then increase back up to my top stitching stitch length. So I've left my needle down, lift my presser foot and pivot, and I'm sewing directly on the line now. Not quite in the corner again, so I'm just going to take teeny tiny little stitches, not quite there again. There we go, and then I can pivot till I'm in the right position to sew this angled line. And make sure to hold your fabric nice and firmly so that this fold doesn't get pulled up anywhere it shouldn't be. I'm coming close to where my zip pull is now, so I'm going to stop, lift my presser foot and just manoeuvre that out of the way. Lower my presser foot and carry on. So I'm heading back for this next corner. And I'm directly on the corner that time, so I can lift my presser foot and pivot. down this line. Now I'm going to stop 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from the folded edge so that I can pivot and sew in that straight line back into the seam allowance, like so. There we go. Now you can go and remove your chalk dust or pen or whatever it is that you've chosen to use. We should have a fully sealed top of a pocket there with no raw edges on our zip or for our fabric, and a fully sealed pocket here, although of course that will get sewn into the seam later. Right, so that's our front panel. We'll get started on the next section. Right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to work on our lining. So we need 2 pocket bottoms cut from our lining fabric, and we need them to be mirrored. We're going to pop them right sides together, and we're just going to sew along this top edge, just the top edge only. Okay, so I'm just going to use my regular stitch length, regular seam allowance. I'm going to back stitch at the start and the end. I'm going to sew all the way along the top. Okay. From here now, we're just going to turn this right sides out and give it a nice press. I'll get my pressing mat up from under my table. Do you know, I find a really nice press you get is if you open a panel out and sort of press against the seam first, and then you fold it under. Now it doesn't matter which way in your bag you have this pocket. So if you'd rather have the short edge on the left, then you can pop it in on the left. If you'd rather have it on the right, then you can pop it in on the right. So decide which way you want your pocket or your tall edge of your pocket to be. And then we'll give it a little press. I don't know why I press these seam allowances open. I feel like it gives it a neater finish, but I don't know if it actually does. And then we'll match bottom edges. Make sure that is really nice and proud and turned out neatly. Give that a press along the top edge. And then we can top stitch along that top edge. Put my little mat away. I've moved my table forward slightly, give myself more space, and I still seem to be struggling for space. So I think it's probably me rather than the space that's the issue. Right, I'm going to increase my stitch length slightly to give me a nice top stitching stitch length. And then I'm sewing at 1/8 of an inch from the edge, or 3mm, all the way along. Lovely. Although I shouldn't worry too much about seeing wonky top stitching on this fabric, because you're not really going to, so that's okay. Right, then we want 1 lining body main, which is also under my desk. There we go. And then we're going to pop this pocket on top. So as I said, you can decide whether you have it with the tall edge to the left or to the right. Although I suppose to you that will probably be mirrored because of the way of the camera, but I'm going to pop mine with the tall edge on the left so that it matches the pattern and I don't get too confused, in theory. Now we are going to baste into place around these side and bottom edges just to hold that into place. I'm just going to use my long basting stitch length, and I'm going to sew inside the seam allowance, so at 1/4 of an inch or 6mm. On these curves, I just like to, I sort of get to them and then lift my presser foot slightly so I can go around the curve. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to divide this pocket up so that I can have a pen slot in here. If you're not bothered about dividing it, you don't have to, or if you want to divide it in half, you can, that's your choice. I'm going to divide it 2 inches or 5 centimetres from the tallest side, which will give me a nice pen sized slot. I don't actually often find myself needing a pen, but I always carry one, because the one time that you don't carry one is the time when you actually really do need one. Now from here, I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to sew up that line to the top and back stitch. Then I'm going to pivot with my needle down and come back down that line, so that I've got 2 lines of stitching with a bit of back stitching at the top. So I'll start with my needle down. I'm using my top stitching stitch length. Just do a little back stitch at the start to stop that unravelling. Sewn up, and I'm at the top of the pocket now, so I'm do a little bit of back stitching, pivot and sew back down that line. Back down to the bottom and a little back stitch just to stop it unravelling again. And I can trim my threads. Lovely, 1 pocket done. So I can pop that to one side for the minute. If you want to add a label, you can add it into the seam. I don't know. Oh, I did bring some labels up with me. Oh, well done me. I'll just add a label in now while I think about it, because I'm having a bit of a clumsy day today. Keep making silly errors, and if I wait till later, chances are I might forget. So I'll just add my label in now while I think about it. Just basting that in the seam allowance. There we go, branded. Lovely. Right, now I can put that to one side. And what do we need? We need, oh, hang on. I am organised. I've got everything laid out nice and neat under my table. So we need a zip pocket top and 2 bottoms. Or do we need the top? We don't need the top right now. We will need the top, but not just yet. We need 2 more zip tabs and some zip. Here we go. Here's some I started using earlier. Right. So the measurements for this is in the pattern again. And we'll measure it and mark before we cut, just in case. As I said, I'm having a bit of a silly error kind of day. I don't know if you ever get that yourself. Some days you just make error after error and you think to yourself, what's going on? Having one of those kind of days. Right, so I've moved the zip pull into place. And trim that. There we go. Right, so I'll put the rest of the zip to one side. So we are going to repeat the same as we did for the zip on the front panel. I'm going to add these zip tabs. So one on the closed end, and then one on the open end. I am going to use a bit of tape again. It's either that or hand sew the zip closed, and I don't think we need to go to that extreme at the moment. Let's try and get this backing paper off. It's very sticky, this one. There we go. Nearly. There we go. I'll make sure that my teeth are lined up as evenly as I can. Hold them together. And then add this zip tab on right sides down. I think I'll sew that one first. So remember, we're sewing at 1/4 inch or 6mm for these zip tabs. And this second side, oh, it's shifted around a little bit. Probably should have used tape on that one, shouldn't I? I'm back stitching at the start and the end. You don't want that to come undone. It'll be sewn into place anyway, but just to be sure that it's all going to stay where we want it to stay. Lovely. Okay. So now we can press this back, or finger press rather, if you're too lazy to get the iron out like me. Right, we don't need to top stitch these just yet. Now we need one of the lining pocket bottom, and if we start with the one that's got the raised edge on the left, I could do with marking the centres at this point. And then we'll add a line of double-sided tape. If I can find the end of my double-sided tape. And peel that off. Nearly. There we go. And then we'll add our zip. So I want my open end to be at the highest edge. So I'll add mine like that. Let's mark the centres on this. And we'll pop it right sides down, match up the centre and just align it with that top angled edge there. Well, that's not quite centred. I'm glad that I'm doing this and getting it a little bit wonky, so you can see that sometimes it's a little bit wonky. Right, that should in theory be a little bit better. Yes, that's better. Okay, and then we'll add another line of double-sided tape onto the back of the zip. You can baste that zip into place in between the last step and this step if you prefer. If you've got some tape, there's no need to. That can act as your basting, as long as you can get the backing paper off. There we go. Now the second pocket bottom, we're going to pop on top, sandwiching that zip into place, right sides together. But again, I'm going to turn mine over just so I can see and line that up a little bit easier. There we go, perfect. Well, perfect-ish, perfect enough. Okay, Right, we're going to sew this into place using our regular stitch length and our regular seam allowance and back stitching at the start and the end. Just sewing along this entire length of zip. Oh dear, see, this is why I keep removing my pins that mark the centre, because I always put them over my zip and then I go to move my zip pull and I can't because I've got pins in the way. If only I invented a solution like using chalk. Okay, there we go. So I should have one zip sewn in between two layers. Lovely. Now we can fold that back and give it a nice good press to keep these layers out nice and neat. I think I probably should give it a proper press, shouldn't I, rather than just a finger press. Let's do things properly today, shall we? Sometimes I do cheat a little bit and just do a little finger press. Right, I'm just going to press against that seam very gently because I want that to be on the front nice and neat. And then fold my layers back, wrong sides together. Give them a nice press, and again on the back. Okay, now we'll use this pressing mat again in a minute, so might see if I can get away with leaving it there. Right, we're going to top stitch on the pocket bottom side, an 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from this sewn and folded edge. So I'll do that now. I've increased my stitch length slightly to a top stitching stitch length. Lift my press foot to move that zip pull out of the way. Oh, nearly caught me under the press foot. Do you ever do that? Sort of ping the presser foot back onto your fingers, catch your fingers. It might just be me and my clumsy ways. Right, okay, so we've done the bottom of our lining pocket. Just turn the page, check I haven't forgotten anything. Okay, and then we need our lining pocket top, which is this little piece here. Okay, now we're going to attach this onto these pieces that we've already got on the bottom. So we'll add a line of double-sided tape to this bottom angled edge of this one. And we've only got one layer of this one because again it's going to be sewn onto the lining main panel like we did for the exterior. It's not gonna be open. Okay, now in theory I've marked my centres, so let's mark centres again. And I really should have marked the centre of this before I put the tape on it. And let's say this is a very helpful video by showing you what not to do in this instance. Okay, and then we're going to pop the zip on top, not that way, this way, matching up centres and then all the way along that angled raw edge. Just match that together all the way along. Oh, this tape is very sticky. My zip pull has got stuck to it. There we go. Okay, now we're going to sew this into place. We only got that one layer. I'm going to back stitch at the start and the end. My construction stitch length. pull my pins out now. As I come close to the end, I'll just stop and move my zip pull out of the way again. And then carry on to the end, back stitch. Trim those threads. Now I've got a pin in here somewhere, so let's remove that. There we go. Okay. So we can fold and press this away from the seam there. This one hasn't got the overlap on it because it's inside the bag. It's just a flat one. I'll give that a little press. And move my zip pull and give that a little press on that side as well. Right. I'm not going to top stitch just yet. I'm going to retrieve my last lining main panel, the one without any pockets on. And we're going to place this on top, matching up all of those raw edges. And I think I might cut this slightly wonky. There we go, that's better. Okay, so we'll just smooth that out. Might add a few clips and hold that in place. Okay, now we're going to top stitch the top edge of the zip into place around just along that edge of the zip there where we've sewn. So increase my stitch length to my top stitching stitch length. Oh, hang on, there we go. Pull that back into place more accurately. So I'm going 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from this top edge. So it will look exactly the same as the bottom edge of the zip pocket, but we're just sealing these raw edges in. You can also, of course, top stitch down the sides of the zip tab at this point if you want. There's no need to, but you can. So we should have a sealed up bit at the, oh dear, can't even open it, at the top of the zip pocket there, and then a fully functioning pocket at the bottom. So we just need to baste around the outside of this panel. Trim my extra bits of my zip tab there. So I'll use a long basting stitch, and I'm going to sew around all 4 sides just to secure this all into place. I'm using my regular, my 1/4 of an inch or 6mm seam allowance to do this basting. That's within or inside the seam allowance. Just going around all 4 sides. Just lifting my presser foot as I get to those corners to help me manoeuvre around the curve of those bottom corners. A little bit of a tight curve there. On the home straight now. And back round to where we started. There we go. Okay, lovely. Right, so should have a fully functioning pocket now. Nothing's going to fall out the bottom. And this panel is complete. If you want to add, I don't know, another decorative label or something, you can always add it onto the top panel at this point. We could pop these lining panels to one side. We're going to work on our zip gusset now. Our gusset that goes all the way around the bag. So we'll pop those to one side and grab our zip gusset pieces. Right, next on the list is our zip gusset. So we should have 2 exterior and 2 lining zip gussets, and then our remaining zip is cut to 12 inches, which is 30.5 centimetres. Right, first thing we're going to do is, well, I've marked my centres already, which I know is some kind of miracle. But there we go, I have. I think I mainly marked them so that I can make sure that my Decaville was centred. Right, so I'm going to add a line of double-sided tape to one long edge of one exterior piece. And then, unless you've got directional fabric, it doesn't really matter which side you put it on. And then I'm going to match up the centre of my zip, or one side of my zip, along that long edge. And then add another line of double-sided tape. And then we'll add a lining piece as well. This is fairly straightforward. This is nice long straight lines, unless you get bored sewing long straight lines, which I do, so that's going to work out well, isn't it? I can't get the tape off that end, so let's try this end. There we go. Lots of people like sewing long straight lines, but I find it a bit boring. Okay, so right side down, our lining zip gusset goes on top. So we've got right side of the zip to right side of the exterior, and then right side of the lining to the wrong side of the zip. Now, take care with the seam allowance for this one because it is slightly different. We've got a 1/4 inch or 6mm seam allowance on this one. So I'm going to start at one end with a couple of back stitches. I'm using my regular construction stitch length, going all the way along, but I'm just going to open my zip slightly to move my zip pull out of the way. There we go. If you're able to press, then please do press at this point. If not, then just give it a good finger press back into position. And then I'll fold this from this end. We're just going to clip it to hold it in position. And that one as well. And then we're going to top stitch at 1/8 inch away from the edge, or 3mm. So I'll increase to my top stitching stitch length. So I'm just going to make sure that my layers are folded back nicely as I go along here, just by sort of pressing them as I pull it along, or as I guide it along. Sorry, I shouldn't need to pull it along. Going all the way along, just moving my zip pull out of the way. All the way to the end. That's nice and neat. And then all I'm going to do is repeat this for the other side of the zip. Don't need to leave those clipped. So I'll transfer my centre mark onto the right side of my zip gusset. Yes, I do have a dinosaur pen. It's a multicolour dinosaur pen. Thank you for noticing. I bought it at a garden centre when I was away with Lynn. We were at a retreat. I was teaching it. And of course we had to go to a garden centre on our spare time because that's what we like to do. And they had all this cute stationery. Oh my goodness. I bought a panda pen and I bought a teddy bear pen for Elvis. And not like this. It is, oh, in fact I might have my panda pen. No, don't get distracted. Right, sorry. The panda pen had little ears on the lid. It was only one colour though. I bought myself a dinosaur pen for my sewing because of course you need a dinosaur pen for sewing. Right, so right side of the exterior, sorry to get distracted, and then right side of the zip face down, matching centres and long edges. Forgot myself there for a moment, started talking about my dinosaur pen, sorry. I could blame it on the heat, couldn't I, because it's quite warm in the studio today. And then another line of double-sided tape. Oh dear, didn't know my strength then. That means that I've got 2 lots of backing paper to try and extract. This could be easier said than done. Oh, nearly. There we go. Halfway there. Oh dear, this other end could be proving tricky. I'd go and make a cup of tea now if I was you. Leave me to it. Oh no, hang on. There we go. And then our second lining piece, right sides down on top. Okay. Oh, I've lost my centre. There it is. So we're matching up these long edges. Like so. There we go. Now we're going to use the same seam allowance as we did before. Remember, we're only using a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this section. Back stitching at the start and the end. Regular construction stitch length. And then as we come to the zip pull, just move it out of the way. Try not to move my zip pull very far in case I've accidentally forgotten to seal the end of a zip somewhere and it goes flying. Right, so we'll press this back. Of course, you're going to press it properly if you can, but if you've got faux leather or similar, and just finger press it is fine. Matching, I'm just matching my centre marks on that side. There we go, we'll finger press this exterior layer as well. Got some stray threads there. And then we're going to top stitch this side as well, same as we did before. So 1/8 of an inch or 3 mil with my top stitching stitch length. All the way along the length there. Move my zip pull out of the way, there we go. Oh dear, lost a clip in a rather dramatic way there. Okay, lovely. Right, so that's our zip gusset done. We need a bit of webbing now. Okay, so now we'll grab our webbing and seal both ends that we cut. So we're going to cut some webbing that is 3 inches long, 2 lots, because we've got 2 rectangle rings that need tabs. Pop that to one side. Just going to seal these ends. the joy of polyester webbing, of course. Right, lovely. So we're just going to thread this webbing through our rings, and we can stitch to secure this. If you'd like to add rivets, then I would recommend adding them at the end, because then you know what space you've got to work with. Okay, so you've got a choice. You can either sew as close to the ring as you like, or as possible, or you can sew at the end. I'm just going to baste the ends together to start with, and then I'm going to swap my presser foot so I can get a bit closer. Right, so I'm just going to pause you a minute. I'm going to swap my press foot over and sew as close to the rings as I can, just to stop those rings twisting in those tabs. Right, I've swapped over to my adjustable zipper / piping foot so that I can sew a little bit closer to these rings. So I'm just going to sew a little back stitch all the way across and then back again. All the way back to the start, and that should prevent that from spinning on the tab then. And I'll do the second one as well. Little back stitch at the other end, and then back all the way back to where we started. Oh, lovely. That is nice and neat, nice and secure. I've got lots of stray threads though, starts and ends of things. Hang on, I've got another one. There we go. Right, so I'm going to swap my presser foot back again to carry on. Right, now that we've done our tabs, I'm just going to centre them over this zip as best we can, and then we're going to stitch to secure them in place. Just centre that over the zip tape there. So I'm just going to stitch these within the seam allowance just to secure them in place for the minute. The back stitch at the start and the end. In fact, I'm going to go back over them just to secure them. I want my strap to be nice and secure. And the same for the other side. There we go. Lovely. Okay. Nice and neat. Got a lovely zip there. Lovely rings. Now we just need to double check the width of this against our base gusset. So we'll just measure those. That's fine. That side. I don't know why I turned my base gusset around. As long as it's the same width. Yep, that's fine. Okay. This is the fun bit. Let me turn the page so I can make sure I haven't forgotten anything. What we're going to do now, we're going to pull our exterior layers together away from the lining. Now we've got our rings in there, so it's a little bit tight. You can always pinch it together in the middle as well if you like. Just basically want to keep these exterior layers out of the way. Now we're going to start with our lining base gusset first, and what we're going to do, we're going to pop our zip gusset on, match up the centre. Well, it should be the same width, so it shouldn't really matter too much. And then I might use some pins on this one. We're going to sew these two together just on this short end between the edge and the seam allowance here where we've attached our zip. I'm going to do the same on the other end as well in a minute. Let me double check the seam allowance before we get going. Yeah, okay, so it's our regular seam allowance, regular stitch length. Start with my needle down, and I'm going to back stitch at the start, and I'm going to sew as far as those seam allowances and then back stitch there as well. Okay, just take your time with this one. Now on the second side, it is a little bit bulky there, so if you need to, you can always make a little mark where that seam allowance is, and you can turn it over and sew from the other side if you need to. As long as it's nice and flat under the presser foot, then everything will be okay. That's all we're really interested in. Go as far as you can to those seam allowances and then stop there. Okay, don't worry too much about this hole in the middle. We will seal that up later. Okay, so we should have our exterior attached to our exterior on one end. So we'll repeat the same for the other end. Make sure that that's not twisted, of course. We'll repeat this for the other side. I'm going to start with the easy side first, without that extra bulk. And trim those threads. And then I'm going to repeat the same as I did before, because I did find that a little bit easier. So I'm going to sew from the other side. Just sometimes if you've got a particularly bulky presser foot like I have, it can be hard to sew over those bits that are a little bit chunkier. Right, lovely. So that's our lining attached. So far, so good. What we need to do now, you can see we've got our lining, and that's only attached to the lining. Just need to repeat the same for the exterior. Okay, so we'll pull the lining panels back out of the way, and then where's the zip pull? There it is. And then we'll match the short ends of the exterior together. In fact, I'll sew this one first and then we'll come back and do the second side. Okay, that's one side, or one half of one side done. I'm just going to make a little mark on the back there where the seam allowances are. Make sure the lining is pulled out of the way. Okay, so we should have 2 sections now on the exterior. So we've got lining attached to lining and exterior attached to exterior, and these 2 bits are completely separate. We'll just finish off. Oh, again, I've got lots of stray threads. I think it's because I'm using charcoal threads and they might be getting caught on my little rubber mat here, escaping being thrown into my thread bin. Okay, I say that as though it's some plot by the thread, but I don't think it is. Right, nearly done on this gusset, and then we can start putting the bag together. And then I'm going to repeat the same for the last section. Just make a mark with my dinosaur pen. Okay. I'm back stitching at the start and end of all of these little seams, just to secure everything nicely. Right, so we should have our lining in a loop and our exterior in a loop and everything not attached. What we're going to do now is we're going to fold these gussets so that they're wrong sides together, like so, and flatten out these seam allowances here where we've got our little hole. We've got a little gap there that we didn't sew. Now we're going to secure these together, but we don't want to secure it all the way. We don't want to sew it all the way. So what we're going to do is just sew from the edge of the zip tab to the edge of the, not the zip tab, sorry, edge of the zip to the edge of the zip, or edge of the strap tab to the edge of the strap tab, which should amount to approximately the same sort of distance. Just going to clip this to keep the seam allowances down and together, and then using a top stitching stitch length, I'm just going to sew between here and here just to close that little gap. If you want to add a rivet instead, you absolutely can. That would be a great option to seal that. And we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from the seam edge. Use my top stitching stitch length. Just taking my time because there's a lot of little layers in there. So I've sewn all the way over. If you would like to, you can sew all the way back again, as long as the material you're using won't be weakened by too many stitch holes. Right, so I'm going to cut my thread tails long on that one, double check that everything is as it should be on the back, and then I'm going to try to pull my thread through to the back and see if I can tie everything off on the back, just so that that's all hidden inside the bag. Lovely. So I've just tied a couple of knots in there just to tie it off on the long side. And sorry, just just bent down to get my fray check. Add a little dab of fray check there just to stop those unravelling. Now we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. I just want to wait a second for my fray check to dry, not smear anywhere. Okay, so just make sure these seam allowances are nice and flat here. And add a little clip there and a little clip there, just hold them in place. I'm going to do exactly the same on this side, just to close that little turning gap there. Not turning gap, sorry, that little gap, little hole that we've got. And then I'm going to go back the other way and just be sure that that is nice and secure. There we go. That's nice and neat. I'm happy with that. So I'll try and pull my threads through from the other side. One of them is there. Got that one as well. It's coming. Just sort of tug on the bobbin thread and a little loop should appear of the top thread. Oh, hang on, no, I've pulled the same one through again. There we go. And check I haven't unravelled anything on the front. No, it's okay. And then with 2 on one side and 2 on the other side, just tie those together. Give those a little trim. And a dab of fray check just to seal that in place. Okay. Now double check your zip is open. We're going to leave it open and we are ready for our final construction now. So go ahead and grab your main panels and we'll get started on our final construction. Right, so we'll get started on our lining panels. Doesn't matter which one you used first, that's up to you, your preference. I'm just thinking that I might want to plan which side is which in the bag. So that side I probably want to be when it's open like that. So if I mark, or if I pin the centre, oh no, I haven't got a centre mark. I knew it was too good to be true. I'm not very good at centre marks usually, and this whole time I've had centre marks. Well, more or less. Until now. That's no good, is it? Right, let's actually mark these centre lines. I'm going to do the width as well, just for a bit of overkill. And then we can say I've definitely marked the centres. I've marked the centre of everything. Right, let's try again. So that be on the back, so I will attach that lining gusset to that lining main panel like that. And I'm going to add a pin for this one because then that definitely won't go anywhere. Okay, now you need to kind of try and ignore the exterior because we're just pinning the lining to the lining. So we'll fold the gusset in half and get the centre of the lining gusset as well. Or I might actually save a bit of time later on if I mark the other side as well. That would help, wouldn't it? There we go. Thank goodness I've got a dinosaur pen. Right, I can justify that to myself hugely. Okay, so we'll match the centre there. Okay, now ignoring this exterior, we're just going to go all the way round, pinning the lining gusset to the lining panel all the way round. You probably will need to snip into the lining gusset to get it to fit nice and neatly. So if that happens, don't worry, that's intentional. Clip this exterior out of the way, keep it nice and neat for the time being. Can use staples or clips, whatever you prefer. Personally, I prefer pins when pinning gussets on cotton fabric, and I might even do a little bit of hand basting later. Right, I'm going to get on with pinning this and then we'll sew it into place afterwards. So I'm just going to snip a few little snips into the seam allowance of the gusset. Don't snip too far. Just to ease that round that curve. Okay, right, so I've pinned all the way round. We're going to sew that into place now. Use my regular construction stitch length. does get a little bit tight around here, just open that zip as much as you can and sort of manipulate it how you need to, as long as whatever goes under your presser foot is flat as it goes under your presser foot, then you won't get any puckers or issues. Okay, I should have started with my needle down so that I can adjust my hands as I need to. So I've back stitched and then I'm just working my way around. Just take your time. I've got the gusset on top. Just helps me control where my layers are. Okay, so as we're coming round towards this top gusset here, it does get a little bit bulky. As I said, just manipulate this, flatten it out however you need to in order to get that under your presser foot nice and flat. And as we come round to the other side again, just flatten everything out as it comes round. It's okay if it springs up again afterwards. That's all right, as long as it's flat as it goes under your presser foot. That's our main aim here. Make sure those layers are nice and flat. Back round to where we started and little back stitch to finish off. And trim my threads. And take these pins out. We're going to trim our seam allowances with some pinking shears. If you haven't got any pinking shears, just cut some little notches into the seam allowance, just to help it sit a little bit neater for you. I do use my pinking shears because it's a little bit easier. Okay, now I'm just going to have a, oh, there's a pin there. Have a little double check that everything is as it should be on the inside before I trim anything. Okay, lovely. And then I'm just going to trim all around these curves with my pinking shears. You can do all the way round if you want, but you only really need to do these corners, these curved corners. And it just helps this these seam allowances sit a little bit easier, a little bit better on these curves. Okay, lovely. Right, so again, ignoring this exterior layer, I can sort of pull that out of the way a little bit. We just want this raw edge of the lining is what we want. I wonder if I can clip that to my tab maybe. Yeah, that will hold that out of the way nicely. There we go. Okay, so all we want is this raw edge of the lining panel, because we're going to do exactly the same as we did for this second side here. Okay, so I'm going to start by pinning. I'll sit myself down for this one. So I'm going to match my centres, start at the bottom. Now on this panel we need to leave a turning gap. So, and we need to leave it as big as possible. So this nice straight bit, I'm going to add a double pin in either side as a little reminder to myself that that is my turning gap. And then I'll match the centre of the zip gusset to the top of my lining main panel. And then I'm just going to work my way round, same as I did before. Make sure those zip teeth are tucked in out of the way. And the exterior is out of the way. We're just interested in the lining for the minute, and we'll come to the exterior in a minute. Right, I finished pinning. Now you might find that if you've been rough on your bag, as have I, some of your stabiliser has started to peel off. Panic not. What will we do? We will glue that into place. Just to hold it, so it doesn't come any further unpeeled while we're constructing. Just a little bit of glue there. We'll just line it up. I've got my original centre mark there on the wrong side of the exterior, so I can see where it was supposed to be. I'll just give that a moment to set. Don't know if, oh, I might be able to hold it in place. There we go, that might just hold it in place while it sets. If not, we might have to redo that. Okay. Right, so I'm going to sew all the way around the lining as we did before, but in the bottom of the gusset here, where I've added my double pins, I'm gonna well, I might start here actually. So I'll start here with a back stitch, my normal stitch length, so all the way round back to the second set of double pins and back stitch, and then I'm going to increase my stitch length and sew across this turning gap with a long stitch length, and then I'll steam press that, or press that, remove those stitches, and then when I turn the bag through and want to close that turning gap, I should have a nice neat line of stitch holes to follow. So I'll start at the first set of double pins, and I'm sewing exactly the same as I did before. So I'll back stitch here, again just flattening everything as it goes under the presser foot. So I'm coming back to my second set of pins. I'm going to back stitch here and then increase my stitch length to my longest stitch length and sew across that turning gap back to where I started. That will give me a nice line of stitches to follow for my turning gap later. Right, let's take these pins out. And then we'll trim the seam allowances with pinking shears like we did previously. Start to get the shape of your bag coming now. I suppose strictly speaking it is a usable bag because you can put things in it. Look a bit odd, I think, going around with a half constructed bag though. Sorry, talk amongst yourselves. Right, okay, I'm just going to have a little sip of water. It's very warm in the studio today. And of course the studio lights for filming don't help with that warmth. And I did accidentally also plug the oil-filled radiator in as well this morning. I forgot that it was connected to the same same extension as one of the other things that I use for filming. It was only when it clicked and I thought, oh, hang on a second, that's not helping with the warmth, is it? Right, so, oh, I forgot to double check that. Let's just have a peek inside and check everything's okay. I guess it's kind of too late now because I've trimmed it anyway, but yep, that's okay. Right, that bag looks fine in there. Very nice. Okay, good. Not looking too great on the outside, so let's add our exterior pieces. Now you need to decide how you're going to carry your bag and which side you want the zip pocket on and which side you want the other panel on. So I think probably I want mine to be like that. And it's easier to sew the other panel on first, so I will attach my plain back panel first. So again, matching centres. I'm going to clip this into place. I think this is a sitting down job probably. So we need to make sure that we've got our lining out of the way for this bit. And I need to attach my bottom. So just flip my exterior gusset round and match the bottom next. Match these flat sides first is always easier. Might need to snip into the gusset on this one. We'll see how we go. Just going to work my way round best I can. I can always unclip and snip if I need to. Right, very, very nearly. So I'll just put a couple of little snips in there. There we go, that's better. Back round to the top and the other side. And I am going to hand baste this one, I'll be honest. I just find on bags like this where I've got quite a tight curve, I do get a much better finish with a hand baste. As much as I hate hand sewing and I hate hand basting the most, if it gives a better finish, then I do it despite hating doing it. No pain, no gain, as they say. Lovely, okay. Right, so I'm going to pause you now and I'm going to hand baste that into place, and then we'll stitch it, and then we'll do the second side as well. Okay, I have hand basted all the way around my exterior. I know there are other ways of basting and I really hate hand basting, but it is, for me, the most effective way of making sure I'm not going to get puckers on my exterior bag. So I'm just going to sew this into place using my regular seam allowance. I'm going to pop my hand inside and just flatten all those layers around the top curves there as I come around. Just want to make sure that that is nice and flat as it comes under my needle. So I'm using my regular construction stitch length, regular seam allowance, and as I get to these curves, I'm just manipulating the gusset fabric so that it's nice and flat. And then as we come back round to the top, I've just popped one hand inside, make sure I'm staying out of the seam line, just to flatten all of those layers down inside that are pushing my exterior fabric out of line slightly. and then back to where we started. Okay, so this time before I use my pinking shears, I am going to double check that everything is all okay. Yeah, that's fine. Should probably double check that none of my basting stitches are visible. No, that's okay. And I haven't got any puckers, so that is excellent. Right, now I can trim these seam allowances with my pinking shears, and that will take that bulk out of those curves and help them to sit nice and neat. And then we can get started on the second exterior panel. Just trim the excess away on those curves. That will help it sit nice and neat then. Right, okay, we're nearly there, very nearly there. So shift that fabric however you need to, so that you've got access to this last raw edge, and grab our exterior panel. I'm just going to move my zip to the middle just so that I know it's not going to get in any seam lines, not because it needs to be in the middle, but I just want to make sure it's definitely safe out of the way. So matching my centre of my gusset to the centre of the bottom of that front panel, and then the top. And then the same as I did before, just working my way round with my clips, and then I am going to hand baste it again, as much as I detest it. If you didn't already know or guess, I don't like hand stitching. I find this panel is a little bit easier to slot into place because everything is taking shape now, and it almost wants to sit at the right place at this point. Right, do a few little snips into my gusset. Help that curve round. I do find as well that hand basting, you can sort of manipulate things or the fabric back into place however you need to, a little bit easier. You can sort of pull it into shape, which I think is a little bit better than machine or staple basting. You've just got a little bit more control over it. Okay, so I'm just working my way round. As I said, at this point it wants to sit into place. So at this point it's not such a I don't know, it's not really a fight. It's not such a not such hard work maybe to get it to sit into place, because it naturally wants to go there anyway. Nearly there. Make sure that my fabric edges are aligned accurately, or as accurately as possible. I mustn't forget that it is me who cut this bag out. A few little snips into the gusset round this curve. I can just pull that into place. Right, lovely. Now I'm going to pause you again so that I can hand baste that into place, and then we will sew that into place and trim our seams. Right, all basted and ready to finish sewing. This gusset into place. So exactly the same as before. Regular stitch length, regular seam allowance, back stitch at the start and the end. Take it steady and control your puckers, I guess. Okay. Just take it steady as we go over these thicker bits where the gusset joins. Around this last curve now, making sure that everything is nice and flat as I come round. And back to where I started from. Right, let's trim these threads. Oh, there's an extra thread. Right, just having a look from this side, I think my basting stitches should all be inside the stitching line, but it's a good idea to double check. So what we'll do is unpick this turning gap. I know I had a unpicker here somewhere. There we go. Just unpick those stitches. We'll have a little feel through then before I trim my seam allowances. Right. Okay. So I'm just going to reach through, have a little feel round of my curves of my gusset and just double check that everything is as it should be. Yes, lovely. Okay. Right, so we'll trim these seam allowances of these corner curves. My pinking shears. Oh, there's a noisy motorbike outside again. Not quite sure how much extra background noise you get with my microphone, but I would like to apologise if that was a bit noisy. I'm sorry. Okay, just take the extra off from those curves. Right, lovely. Okay, now comes the shoulder workout. Turn the bag through, and this is the point where we think, hang on, is this turning gap big enough? So I'm trying to just turn the lining over. I think my hand is taking up most of the space. back where I started. Oh dear. Might need a slightly bigger turning gap next time. I think this is probably why I don't design small bags. The bigger the bag, the bigger the turning gap you can have. Although I suppose the bigger the bag, the bigger the bulk there is to go through the turning gap. So that probably doesn't work, does it? Right, we are getting there. It helps to sort of squish the bag up, or roll the bag up rather, to get it through there. Whew. Right, halfway there. I'll just turn it right sides out now, which is a lot easier. Push these corners out nice and neat. Now don't panic too much if your stabiliser is sort of creased up a little bit. Either a nice extra steam from the line inside if you can, or don't panic too much about it, because once it's in use for a little while, those will disappear. I'm just going to roll my seams and sit nice and proud. There we go, lovely. Right, just need to close this turning gap then. So we'll pull the lining out. Looking a little bit worse for wear, poor thing. I was a little bit rough on that then, sorry. So we're just going to fold that turning gap over. I'll use pins, seeing as I've helpfully zipped up my clips pouch. And we'll just pin these together. Those raw edges tucked in nice and neat. You will see the turning gap on this bag, so it is best to make it nice and neat. If you're comfortable with a hand ladder stitch, then that is a great option if you don't want it to be visible. Otherwise, a close machine top stitch is a really good option. Right, let's pop that under. I am going for the anti-hand stitching option, as you can see. So I'm sewing close to the edge without risking going over the edge. I'm sewing all the way to the end of that turning gap, with back stitch either end, and trim those threads off. I think it probably helps that my fabric is so busy, because that will be hidden quite nicely. Yep, all sealed, lovely. Right, that can go back inside, be tucked in. I'm just going to push all the seam allowances out and all the corners into all the corners. Make sure that's all as it should be. If your fabric can handle a press, then I would give it a press, but if not, just smooth all of those seam allowances for the top into those top curves. Help it sit nice and neat then. Now, we've got a lovely clutch, or we can finish it off and make it into a proper bag. So we need some more webbing. Let's have a look, see how long the webbing should be. Now, I didn't actually measure my webbing to start with, so that's not much good, is it? Right, I'm just going to go and get a tape measure and measure my webbing. Hang on. Right. I did not, in fact, find a tape measure, so we're going to guesstimate. Well, we're not going to guesstimate, we're going to measure using my cutting mats. That's 48. So that's, I want a 60-inch strap at the most. 950. So 12 there-ish. Anything from a 54 to a 60-inch strap is fine, but if you followed the pattern accurately, the amount you've got left should be fine for your strap, because I did measure it properly that time. Seal the end there. Seal the end of the roll as well so it doesn't start fraying from the roll. Okay, lovely, and I've got some left for another time. Right, last thing now, we should have one piece of hardware left. Our strap slider or tri-glide, and what we're going to do is we're going to thread this onto our webbing like so. So it's just attached, or it's just through that middle bar of the slider, and then we're going to stitch that into place. Now this will be hidden by the rest of the strap, so don't panic too much. Just the underside will be seen on the underside of the strap. Is all. Oh, I've lost my foot. Right, there we go. Not my actual foot, my go foot. Don't actually know what that's called. Control pedal? Foot pedal? Foot control pedal? Not sure, there's probably a proper name for it. I shall have to have a look. Okay, right, so our ring is, or our strap slider is attached to our webbing. Let's move some things out of the way so I don't knock anything off as I do this. Leave a couple of clips just in case. All right, now decide which shoulder you want your bag to be worn over, and then adjust accordingly. So I'm going to do mine so that I can wear it, or it could be worn on the right shoulder. So if you follow the pictures in the pattern, that is for wearing it over the right shoulder. So with the bag, the front of the bag towards you, we're going to thread the loose end of the strap through the left hand rectangle ring. Okay. So to me, that's the left hand rectangle ring. We've threaded that through. Now we're going to thread the loose end back through the strap slider over what we've already sewn into place and out the other side. Now before you secure this into place, this is where you can just double check that it does fit on the right hip, or the correct hip. So at this point I would pick it up. Oh, hang on, have I twisted that? No. Pick it up and just slip it on over your shoulder to double check that that sits how you want it to with the position of the slider. I'm happy with that, so I can stitch that into place to secure it. Just going to align my webbing slightly better. It's shifted around slightly. Okay, now it is a little bit awkward fitting this under the presser foot, but I think it's better to do it this way because then you can be sure that you've got it on the right way for how you want to wear it, or which shoulder you want to wear it over. And then we'll just add some stitches here across the webbing. To secure it in place. Okay, lovely. There we go. So, double check. We've got our pocket in the front there. Yep, lovely. We've got our top zip here. We've got our slip pockets and our zip pocket. Everything is all sealed up, no turning gaps left open, and this bag is done. I hope you sewed along with me today. If you did, please send me pictures. I love to see what you make from my patterns. Thank you for your time. You can find more patterns at www.themakespace.uk. See you again. Bye bye.